me hong, amane pe me hong. Oh yeah, okay, good. Thank you so much. Hi. My name is Kathy Wesley. I work here. And I want to say thank you and good morning to everyone for being here today. As you can see, it's a usual Sunday, but it's not a usual Sunday. So I'll say a little bit about the shrine display that you see in front of you, and then I'll get into my topic for today. Somewhere in the 1600s, the 9th Karmapa, the head of our lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, devised a system of practice based on all of the teachings of tranquility and insight meditation that had been handed down from the Indian master Tilopa, who lived nearly 1,000 years ago in India and attained enlightenment. And upon his enlightenment, he had a vision of the Buddha Shakyamuni. And in this vision, the Buddha Shakyamuni gave him essential short instructions on how to meditate on the true nature of mind as empty luminosity and so on. So these essential instructions that Tilopa received from Shakyamuni Buddha in the form of the Buddha Vajradhara in this vision, then got passed down from his generation to the next generation to the next generation and so on until today. And so these teachings that are part of Buddhist tradition in Tibet began in India and came to Tibet in the, I'm going to say, they probably came in the 900s, 1000s time period. And they were passed down through a series of teachers. Well, here we are in America, and Tibetan Buddhism, because of political difficulties in their home country, Tibetans had to leave Tibet and come to live in exile communities in Asia and around the world. And little outposts of the Karma Kagyu tradition exist now in far-flung places like Singapore and Indonesia and South Africa and Columbus, Ohio. Who'd have thunk it, as my mom used to say. And so this shrine room is an expression of that tradition. Not all the pieces are here yet. Our large statue of the Buddha Vajradhara, who I guess you could say was the parent of this lineage, is still down in the community room waiting to be filled. And the statues of Tilopa and the other initial lineage holders of this wonderful teaching called Mahamudra, they're up in Dublin at somebody's house, waiting to come here for us to finish creating the shrine that will house them. But in the meantime, we're doing what we can to uphold this tradition that began with the very first teachers in India, continued through the lineage of Karmapas and into today. The reason I started my chat with the 9th Karmapa is that he was sort of in the middle, because we've had 17 Karmapas now. And around the time of the 9th Karmapa, he invented some methods of practice to prepare a person for the practice of Mahamudra. Folks will know these as the nundro, or the preliminaries, which consist of reciting special purification mantras, taking refuge repeatedly, like 100,000 times, and making offerings, imagined and so forth, real, and then reciting prayers, supplicating this lineage of masters. Well, as part of this process, we purify our confusion and delusion, I guess you could say sequentially, little by little by little. By doing all of these practices, we symbolically free our mind from doubts, cravings, bad habits, and so on, so that we can, when the time is ready, receive the teachings, the exact same essential teachings that Talopa received 1,000 years ago. The exact same has been passed down from teacher to disciple in this unbroken line for 1,000 years. Well, the ninth Karmapa was special because he devised the Nundro that we do today. He devised it. It had already been done in different forms, but he systematized it and wrote the text we still use today. Well, fast forward to America. It's 1970-something or other, and Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche has been sent by the 16th Karmapa to the United States to teach us. Many of his initial students were, shall we say, ex-hippies who were kind of into it, you know? They were into the hippie lifestyle. And so I'm sure it was very, very difficult for the Tibetans who came from a very patriarchal and conservative cultural background to kind of see us wild, you know, folks dressed funny and dancing and taking strange drugs and things like this. Well, in the midst of all this, they decided to go ahead and impart the Mahamudra to us anyway, in spite of all this. And they gave us methods of practice to make that happen. So one of the methods that the 16th Karmapa gave to my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, was the practice of the second Karmapa, Karmapakshi. Karmapakshi, who's depicted in this large painting that was donated to us this very week. It arrived on Sagadawa, the day of the Buddha's enlightenment. This particular image of Karmapakshi, the second Karmapa, who I was talking to some friends at the desk this morning, Karmapakshi was either met or seen or heard of by Marco Polo, the Italian explorer who went to Mongolia and met the Mongolian emperor, because there were these monks that Karmapakshi had left behind. And so this historical personage, this second Karmapa, was the first incarnate Lama of Tibet. There had not been any before him. And he could actually work miracles. He could perform miracles. And so he's renowned as a great Mahamudra teacher and so forth and so on. So a practice was written to supplicate his blessings so that the practitioners could do Mahamudra practice and to bless their Mahamudra practice. And so this practice was devised, again, 16th, 17th century by a Yongey Mingyur Dorje, who, by the way, if any of you have read any books by the young master Mingyur Rinpoche, his original incarnation had a vision of Karmapakshi giving him the pointing out instructions, you know, in how to do Mahamudra. So, this text is incredibly special in so many ways. And the 16th Karmapa told my teacher, when your students finish these preliminaries, give them this practice to do. Give them this practice to do. It's short, I mean, compared. Some pujas go like for 4 hours. This one's shorter. You know, give this to them to bless their mind streams so they can feel a connection to Mahamudra and do this practice. So when we got our building on this property in the 90s, we started doing a feast practice once a month for Karmapakshi. And we have not done this feast practice since the fire, because it's very elaborate. As you can see, the shrine is quite a lot, and there's a lot of snacks on the table. And all of these get blessed and handed out as a form of fellowship and blessing. So that is why we have this massive table of goodies here. And some of us made some of these Tibetan offering cakes called tormas yesterday. And so we're ready to do our first feast in this new building, and it will start somewhere around 1 o'clock today. So this is what all the fancy stuff is about. That's why the shrine's a little dressed up. I mean, not only is it dressed up with all the beautiful flowers that everyone donated for the, and thank you to the team who assembled them, they're beautiful. Not only do we have these beautiful flowers for the Buddhist holiday that happened on Thursday, we now have all of this amazing beauty to sort of uplift our minds and to bring us goodness and happiness. And so anyway, I'm just really tickled. And this painting, the scroll painting, every stroke done by hand. It's very unusual to see these. We had one and we lost it in the fire. And it wasn't even this elaborate. And this is an extremely elaborate painting, and it was donated to us by a person who had used it in their own practice for 20 years. So this painting itself has a lot of blessings. So I'm just happy to be able to share all this beauty with you today. So sorry that was a really long, I guess you would call it a shaggy dog story. That was kind of a long story. Maybe it had a point. But I think the main point for me is that I feel lucky to be here with all of you today on a holiday weekend. And here you are. Thank you so much for spending a couple of hours with us today. And to be able to share this feast with you. Don't worry if you can't stay. We'll try to save some of the packaged goods and give them away next Sunday. So when you come back next Sunday, we'll have the juice boxes that got blessed but not drunk. And we have some packaged goodies that we can give you, so you can have some of that blessing as well. So thank you just for listening to my story. Today, I'm going to talk, I don't know if you saw the topic online, but the topic for today is persona non grata. And this is a diplomatic term, as it says in Wikipedia, which is what happens when an ambassador from one country is visiting another country, and they are found to have done something very naughty, and they are pronounced persona non grata by the host government, and they're sent home. So it means this person is not welcome. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about the whole idea of persona and so forth, and how we develop this over time and how it fits in with our Buddhist practice. So I'm going to talk about that today. So we'll start with, as we usually do, with the prayer of taking refuge. It's on this sheet, and we'll recite it 2 times in English and then once in Tibetan. I will start with the words in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. O sanje chudang sochi chonamla jang chu bardu dani kyap suchi daji jinso jibe sunam ki Drola penshir sanjay druparsho. Okay, thank you. I'll start with a short prayer of my own, and then we'll begin. O palden sawe Lama rimboche tagi chiwar pede ten shula kadrin chembo kone che sonte. Kusum tugging a drip sal du sol. All right, thanks very much. So this is something I've been thinking about for a while and had some good conversations about in the last day or two. And so I thought it would be good to talk about it. And I think that all of us, we start out with what you might call a self-identity. When even from the time that we're very young, our parents might say to us, oh yeah, you were a real character the minute that we met you. In other words, we established our identity with our families pretty quick. We were either sometimes they call them good babies, and sometimes they call them, instead of calling them bad babies, they call them fussy babies. So we start out with some kind of, we already have a label on us, darn it, from the minute that we're small. And then it just keeps going. I remember being like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, and my neighborhood friend said, oh, you're so bossy. You're so bossy. And I'm like, me? Bossy? No. But the fact of the matter was, I was really bossy. And so that name followed me for quite a while. And then, of course, comes the identification with our name. And then when we start getting, shall we say, socialized in school, then other kids want to put labels on us too, And they call us names, and sometimes they call us names until we cry. And it's tough. It's tough being a kid, because I think kids are really scared. A lot of kids are really scared. It's really hard to be a human being, and nobody tells you how to do it, and then you're a kid and you have zero power. Zero power. All of the tall people, all of the adults, they tell you what to do, where to go, how to sit, how to eat. They tell you everything, and you have zero power. And so, of course, kids act out with each other because they have nobody else to strike. They can't strike out against the parents because, they're these monolithic beings, right? Because we identify them too. Not only do we have identities, they have identities. The good parent, the bad parent, the this parent, the that parent, or even the absent parent. So everybody's got a name. Everybody goes around all through life with names being attached to them. Some of them are unfair, let's face it. Just because my father's stepfather's last name used the word cheese, had the word cheese in it. Yes, cheese. Isaac Cheesebrew was my grandfather on my father's side. And so the kids got the name. And you will not believe what the other kids did with that name. Cheeseburger was mild. Cheeseburger was mild. Cheesebooger, on the other hand, that had legs. That had legs. So and sometimes when these things happen to us, we internalize them because we don't know how to handle what's happening. I mean, it's overwhelming being a human being. It is just flat out overwhelming being a human being, and we don't know how to deal with it. We can't. We just don't know how. Nobody taught us, so we have to figure it out. And sometimes we take on other personas. I remember reading an interview with the actor Hugh Laurie, who became famous a number of years ago. He's a British actor who became famous for his dramatic role as Gregory House on a television series about a hospital. And he was interviewed once about his childhood, and he said, there was a phase in my life, he said, where I decided I wanted to burn it all down. He's like, I'm mad at everybody. I want to burn it all down. So he said, I started dressing in black, and I kind of put on like a tough guy thing. And then I became a rower, and I became an athlete, so then I got to really act on all of my impulses, right? So he said, but I did this because I felt like nobody respected me. And this identity gave me a feeling that was a good feeling, that was a powerful feeling, it felt right to me. And believe it or not, we all do this. When I was a teenager, I pretended to be a hippie. I was way too young for that. I mean, I was way too young for that. But I liked the peace, love, and understanding. You know, I wanted to do that. So, you know, I did everything but the drug abuse. I was a teenage Catholic. I did all of it except that in my high school years. And so, like, I dressed in beads and, you know, bangles and the whole thing, and I wore the long bell-bottom trousers. I did the whole thing. And I felt that that identity expressed something within me that I liked. But eventually I had to go to work, and my boss called me into the office and said, you're not in college anymore, friend. You are not in college anymore, so you've got to ditch the jeans. You're working in an office now. You've got to dress like you're working in an office. So I'm like, okay, you know, I got to dress, and I did all that stuff, and, you know, because my identity now had to be newspaper reporter. I mean, the journalism degree led to it, so I had a good start, but newspaper reporter. So I did that for 15 years, had that identity for 15 years. Meanwhile, I'm trying to be a success in my career and trying to do everything else, but all of my habits of identity from childhood began to come and get me. You know, people pleaser, codependent child of, you know, you figure it out. So I had a lot of these other things going on. And so, but what's so interesting is that when I got to college and started doing all the wild stuff, then I took that identity for a little while, but that was painful. I didn't like running around and getting high every weekend. It just was like, it was like a waste of time. It's like, man, that's a waste of time. So I just couldn't do it. At one point, I said to myself, I am never doing drugs again. That's it. So this was an identity that I took on at that time. I took on that identity at that time. And then I met Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. 1 year out of college, thank heaven, I met a Tibetan monk 1 year out of college. Because I said, I want to do that. Whatever he's doing, I want to do that. And so that became my identity, a bodhisattva in training. I became a bodhisattva in training, and I had to be a secret bodhisattva in training because I worked for a newspaper, and they all thought Buddhists were weirdos. Of course, a lot of us were, to be fair. So, in any case, but that was a persona I could live with. I didn't have to change clothes for it. You know, I didn't have to wear anything different or do anything different. I just had to be different. I had to be different. I couldn't be bossy anymore. What? I couldn't use my safe behavior anymore. What? Bodhisattvas are selfless. What? And it was really scary. I didn't think I could do it because my selfishness was all that was keeping me afloat sometimes. And so you mean I have to change that persona? This is going to be tough. But yet, I was able to make small changes. A little change here, a little change there. I didn't like overnight, you know, become somebody I wasn't. Does that make sense? Because what's really interesting is that underneath all the personas, we're not like any of that. From the Buddhist point of view, we're pure being. We are pure being. We have a mind that has no color, no shape, no location, no beginning, and no end. In other words, our mind is limitless. And as such, it possesses the capacity to experience everything. And one of my teachers, Taisita Rinpoche, said, we take this massively huge, pure being that we are, no color, no shape, no location, no beginning, no end, and we squeeze it down into the smallest little package we can create, and that's self. We take this brilliant, beautiful, limitless thing that's capable of Buddhahood, that's within all of us. We get born with it. And then we cram it all down into this little identity. And so this is what's so interesting to me, is that, now I wear funny outfits from time to time, as you can see. And because my teacher encouraged me to wear them when I was teaching. He gave us our kind of we'll call it clerical garb, if you want to use a word, our clerical outfits when we finished our 3-year training retreat. When we finished our 3-year retreat, he gave us all these skirts, and this is not the original one. I outgrew that one. But he gave us our skirts and told us to wear yellow or gold or red shirts, and gave us a shawl that was the burgundy color that monastics would wear. That's because that was the custom in his country, in his part of Tibet. That's what the post-retreat people wore solid color burgundy shawls. It was just a number of years ago that he asked us to change to a different monastery's style, the Serpu monastery style, which when people finished the 3-year retreat, they would wear a different color of shawl. So, but otherwise, he gave us all of our clothes. And then he said, traditionally in Tibet, when a person finishes the 3-year retreat, they are given the title of Lama. Now, parsing his words very carefully, I identified 2 words. Traditionally, that's 3 words, in Tibet. Meaning, maybe not here, but traditionally in Tibet. Okay, so anyway, he said they're given the title of Lama. La refers, by the way, to Lanamedepa, a Tibetan phrase that means insurpassable. And Ma means mother. So the Lama is the insurpassable parent for sentient beings who are wandering in this world and trying to find their way, putting on and taking off identities, putting on and taking off ideas of who they think they are, and so forth and so on. We get to go among all these people and help them find their inner Buddha nature. And so, because that's what he said. He said, and now that you've been called, you can be called a Lama, what does this mean? He said, well, from now until you die, you have one function, and one function only. He said, and that is to connect every single person you meet. Connect them all with the Dharma, meaning like their inner goodness. And so that, no pressure, nice job interview, no pressure. But then I took this on and, made horrible mistakes and, didn't know how to do that, because you don't get taught that. You get to do a lot of mantra in retreat, but you don't learn how to talk to people and, how to listen and all of these things. And so I brought all of these bad habits with me. I'm still bossy. Darn it. Still, after all this time, do this, do that. And I had 5 people helping me get ready for this, and I'm like, do this, and it's like, damn, I'm still bossy. Anyhow, hopefully it's for the good, greater good, and I hope I do it nicely. I try to be the nicest bossy person that I possibly can, because it's all about the effort, right? Progress, not perfection. My buddies in 12-step will understand me. Progress, not perfection. So I think that the story that I'm telling about my own life may make you think of your life. And it might help you to understand that we, as one of the great philosophers said, we live forward. We live in going forward. We don't live in the past. We only live in one direction. That's the future, and the future is always out there for us to make changes in. I know it's trite, but I still have to say my favorite, one of my favorite bumper stickers says, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood." Now that is, in a way, it's an unkind statement, because so many people have been through so much. And so it makes light of bad situations that people get born into and get raised in. But I don't look at that aspect of it. I tend to look at the living forward aspect of it, where you get to make a change any time that you want. And it really comes down from the bodhisattva point of view. The teaching, the word bodhi means awakening, and sattva means like a person who has the mind that wants to wake up. So a bodhisattva is a person who works toward awakening. That's who a bodhisattva is. And in trying to become that person, trying to become that bodhisattva, we do our best to listen to others and figure out how to interact with them in healthy, positive ways, and how to interact with ourselves in positive ways. And I feel like that identity of all of the ones I've had in my whole life is still my favorite. Bodhisattva in training. And this is why some of you will still see the fundraising t-shirts from a few years ago. When I had my friend, the cartoonist Max Granitz, who lives in Los Angeles and does animation for a living, he designed a t-shirt with a whimsical character with many arms. It looks like it's from a children's book, this whimsical character. And it says Bodhisattva in training on the shirt. Because we should like have a placard on my back saying like, I'm gonna screw up, excuse me. I'm gonna make mistakes being a bodhisattva, but please be patient. That's another nice bumper sticker that I'm seeing more now. Student driver, please be patient. Student bodhisattva, please be patient. And so it's my hope that talking about this is helpful. I'm only going to say one or two more things, and then we can have a discussion because we've got the question mics out. I remember we were talking about healthy and unhealthy personas that we can take on. And there's a lot of literature that is written, fictional stories about people who start out as one kind of person. The Christmas Carol is the most famous one by Dickens, where this curmudgeon who is money-grubbing and cruel and so forth, who himself had a very lonely and deprived childhood, becomes a mean old person and hates Christmas, and then is visited by 3 ghosts over a Christmas Eve, and then changes into a kind person. Well, it's not going to happen for us like that, maybe. We won't necessarily be scared straight by a ghost or 2 or 3. But what we will do is we will continue to make incremental change, one thing at a time. I was talking to a friend yesterday evening, and they said something to the effect of, I want to be less negative in my life. And I said to them, well, just change like one thing at a time. Don't try to make yourself like a happy person overnight. Just say a few good things to yourself in the day. Appreciate something that you didn't appreciate before. I was looking out the window at that moment, and I said, right now I'm looking and I'm seeing the evening sun in the tree leaves, and it's like really beautiful to see the evening sun in the tree leaves. And I just took like 30 seconds to a minute to appreciate tree leaves. And if we can do these little changes, these incremental small changes, then the change that we want to make in ourselves will happen almost imperceptibly, but definitely will happen. And then people will look to us, and we'll be the person that they say, well, that person, they've got it more together than me. Because that's what I felt like when I saw Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. He's got it together. I do not. And so that's why I studied with him, and I did what I did and became a student. And then even though he's passed away, I still consider that I work for him. He's my boss, and he's, in fact, we jokingly called him the boss when he was alive. It's really disrespectful, but anyway, I know. Anyway, So somebody spoke. I was in Michigan with my husband, and we attended a family Dharma weekend in near Horsehead Lake in northern Michigan. And Khenpo Rinpoche was there, and they had a little pavilion, and he gave them Manjushri empowerment, and it was a lovely occasion. And he was giving a teaching on the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri. And I tell this story frequently, so you have to forgive me. But somebody said, well, you know, they were commenting, the questioner was commenting on the practice of mantra and visualization. And in visualization and mantra practice, we imagine for a short period of time that we're in the presence of a real enlightened being by visualizing them made of light, either in front of us or above our heads, and then we pray to them, and then we imagine that light comes from their form, and it purifies us of all of our confusion and delusion. And then we become that Buddha, made of light, no longer being made of flesh and blood, but being made of light, which is brilliant and majestic and so forth. And then we dissolve everything at the end into emptiness and rest our mind in its original true nature. So someone was commenting on that practice, and they asked Rinpoche, well, you know, it's all well and good to visualize that you're a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. It's well and good to do that. But isn't it a little fake? Isn't that a little fake? Because I look in the mirror, I'm not Manjushri. And then Rinpoche, just with his, you know, inimitable kindness and generosity, said, well, you've already made up who you think you are right now. You made it up completely. So why couldn't you be Chenrezig? Why couldn't you be Manjushri? Why couldn't you? You've made it up right now. And it's just like, wow. And then he went on, he pressed on. I mean, he had been trained in debate, in classic Buddhist debate in a monastic college. We were no match for him, okay? And in fact, it's really cute. The monks, they call it combat. When they do debate, they call it war or combat. It's a spectator sport because it's very dramatic. They take their mala beads and they cross it across one palm, and then they put the question to the person who's sitting below them. And so like you're in a disadvantage, and then this person really speaking to you very sharply and loudly then claps their hands and says, answer. So you can kind of see where that goes. Anyway, so he pressed on and said, not only have you made up who you think you are right now, he said, if you think about it, who you are right now, who you think you are right now is not really who you are. Because you have Buddha nature, and just whatever persona or whatever you put on is just, it's for show. It's how you communicate with the world, maybe, but it's not who you are. And so he said, I would put it to you, he said, that when you imagine yourself as a bodhisattva made of light, you are being more honest about who you are. You're being more honest because that is truly who you are inside. And then later, years later, the Dalai Lama gave a teaching at our home monastery in Woodstock, and he talked about this same style of meditating. And he said, when you think about it, when you are meditating on yourself as being made of light and empty inside and having the body of a Buddha, he said, you're doing symbolic meditation on your actual true nature. Because the Mahamudra meditation texts that teach us how to be enlightened say that your mind is empty luminosity. In other words, your mind is pure awareness. The same awareness that makes you aware of the things you see and hear, that you can be aware of that awareness too, this empty luminosity, this empty awareness. And he said, it's when you meditate on a Buddha or Bodhisattva, you're doing symbolic meditation on the nature of your mind. And he says, and then what do you do at the end? He said, you dissolve everything into utter emptiness and rest there. So he said, this is, it's good practice. Good practice. So anyway, I thought I would end with that story about it being more honest to see ourselves as a Buddha or Bodhisattva, because that story gets me every single time, because it's more truly who we are. And so I tell people, if you want to gradually change how you see yourself, make the aspiration every morning when you wake up that may everything I do today benefit other beings in some way. Even if I make a fool of myself and fall flat on my face, may other beings' laughter benefit them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, even if I goof up and make terrible mistakes, may somehow that be of benefit to me and others. And you can think like this, and it gradually changes how you experience everything. So it's worth it. The other thing I did, though, was I put a picture of the face of the Buddha on my desk, because one of my other teachers said, it's good to have a reminder of your Buddha nature somewhere and that you can look at and see. So there was an art print of just the eyes and the eyes and the nose of the Buddha from the big Buddha that's in Lhasa, And I just put that as an art print on my desk. That and the picture of Mr. Rogers and Doctor Who. I think it was a great trinity. And I won a friend from that. A friend came up, a person I had never met came in to get their picture taken, and then they saw the picture of Doctor Who on my desk, and they said, Doctor Who. And I'm like, yes, I'm a fan. And then he said, me too, and we're still friends. That was a long time ago. And I'm grateful. You know who you are, thank you. And so I think we'll stop here for right now. And if anybody has questions or comments, you can use the question microphone, and we can chat. And if not, that's okay too. Questions, curiosities, comments. We got a customer. All right. Yeah. Thanks for bailing me out, Michael.
My pleasure, Lama Kathy. I'm going to try to step through something.
Yeah.
It may be a question, it might be a statement. I'll see where
I
it
may
goes.
ask you to move closer.
It may be a question, it might be a statement. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, see where it goes, yeah.
Since coming here, I've had the opportunity to kind of really delve into the notion of empathy and compassion. I've said the name Chenrezig so many times that one would think that I actually knew who that was before a long time ago. I didn't.
Get that, yeah.
I'm finding that it's pushing me into directions that I find profoundly uncomfortable.
Ooh, yeah.
I feel exposed. Like,
Yeah.
to get to the empathy and compassion, I have to kind of open myself up in ways that I have found disarming.
I understand.
It's like you have to kind of take your armor off.
I get you.
You have to kind of put away your posturing.
Yeah.
You have to set aside your pretense.
Right.
In order to be able to properly feel compassion and empathy for others.
Right.
So, I guess, yeah, I don't know that there's a question in there, but I did want to say that in learning who you really are, your actual persona, it seems that I've had to, once you take off all of the stuff, you have to sit there and kind of be with that version of you
Right.
it has been quite a learning experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess there's a thank you in there too.
Okay. I'm sorry, was there more? No. What you've said is really, it's really good, because what you're describing is something that I went through. And I think that everybody who attempts to live a spiritual life, we all go through this. And there's so many facets to it and so many degrees of it. But I really appreciate the way you've summarized it, because because we often use our personas to protect us, ourselves. I think you used the term armor, and you're not the first person who has used that. Pema Chodron, the author, she talks about this. The Buddhist author, she talks about the wearing armor and then having to take it off, and then feeling exposed, you know. But what's really interesting about that process is that life was probably going to do it to us anyway. If we wanted to have a meaningful life, we were going to have to shed or take off the armor in order to be real, you know, and be genuine and be authentic. And the world can, you know, sort of kick you around a lot before it starts to fall off. But then we do get to recognize that each and every other person is going through the same thing. Because the word self-honesty came to mind when you were speaking, because in a way we have to be honest with ourselves about what we are and who we are, and really, and in some ways we have to forgive ourselves for being who we've been. And you know, you see what I'm saying? And like, we may have hurt people along the way, and we have to accept that, and we have to make amends with that, even in our own mind, right? But in the end, it is better, from my point of view, to live a contemplative, conscientious life than it is to go through life and not know who I am, and have other people define me. You're bossy, and things like this, you know, because you see what I don't know where I'm going either, Michael, but I'm very happy to hear your description, because we all have to confront the fact that we're human. Surprise. And we're not perfect. Surprise. And it's painful to see ourselves differently, but the fact of the matter is now we can start doing more things. Because the personas were holding us back from doing more things. I don't know, I better stop talking, but I really appreciate the realness of what you're talking about, because I went through that. There was it's true. There was a point where after taking the Bodhisattva vow, I was sitting in the living room with my husband, and I said, oh my gosh, my life doesn't belong to me anymore. And at first that was a little scary to think that, but now it's like, no, it's fine. It's like the world's biggest party, and I'm giving it. You know, I'm the party. I get to give this party. You know, it's like really weird. I mean, I had to go and get some tests done recently, because one of my medications got changed, and I had a reaction to it. So I got to meet a lot of nice healthcare practitioners. So I took a cue from my wonderful husband, who wears Hawaiian shirts everywhere. So I wore my banana shirt every time I went to the doctor, and and it really helped a lot. And the nurses all loved it. And so, you know, I'm a movable party now, and it's kind of, as they say in Britain, I'm a figure of fun. Okay, yeah. Anyway, thank you. Keep going. That's all I can say. Keep going. Good morning. Or afternoon now, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, sir. Okay, then 1 and 2, okay? Then that'll be the morning, yes.
I liked what you said about the story where he pointed and he said, you know, who you are today, that you're making that up too.
Right.
And
yeah.
this really kind of reflected for me, because a lot of times you predicate your self-image and your sense of I-ness on your physical capabilities or your physical appearance. And as you get older, you don't have the same physical capabilities, your appearance changes, and that can lead to feelings of insecurity because you've always counted on these things. And I guess, you know, as I've learned more about the Dharma, one of the things about samsara is that it comes and it goes. Things are
ebbs and flows.
you know, there's the zenith of the day and then there's the darkness of the night, and you know, and I think that, you know, especially now I'm experiencing changes in mobility, changes in energy, you know, and it's frightening, you know, when things that you thought that you could count on about yourself start to become unreliable. So it's very comforting to have a way to envision the realness and the truthfulness about my nature. I was lucky enough last year to have a glimpse of what that meant. And I guess my question is, when you begin to have a sense of that sense, not just an intellectual understanding, but a real felt sense, what can you do to increase that and make it more real in everyday life?
I really, again, these are really great statements. We're hearing a lot of really good statements today, and I want to thank you for coming to the microphone and sharing those statements, because I feel like we all go through this, and what Michael has said and what you've said, it's like, it's what we all experience. We all experience these things, and we all go through these phases of practice. And I think that I'm really glad you asked the question about how to expand these things to fill the other parts of your life. And I do think that the Bodhisattva discipline of checking on your motivation frequently through the day is really powerful. Because, you know, of course, there's the famous story about the film director Alfred Hitchcock. Well, I think, was it Hitchcock? Somebody asked him, some method actor said, "What's my motivation?" Because method acting involves knowing the character's motivation in every scene. And he asked Hitchcock, "What's my motivation in this scene?" And Hitchcock said, "Your paycheck." So I think that kind of put it right there. But we can joke about method acting and all of this kind of stuff and make fun and all this. But the fact of the matter is, we actually have power over our next thought. The one we just had, no chance. It's going to arise because of our habits from previous lifetimes, from this lifetime, maybe the bad food we had for breakfast this morning. Stuff is going to happen and stuff's going to pop up in our mind. But what we do with it next, so that bad attitude you might wake up with in the morning, you may not do this, but I do sometimes. Wake up with that bad attitude in the morning, it doesn't have to be your whole day. You know, that's what's so funny about it, because what you do with it is up to you, right? It's up to us. So, Trungpa Rinpoche, and I'm so glad you said what you said, because it reminded me that this story I wanted to tell about Trungpa Rinpoche. He said one time, if you check up on your motivation several times a day, you can't go wrong, because he said, if you see that your motivation is not good and you're not going in a good direction, he said, if your motivation is not good, change it. And I said to myself, like I can, because I thought that I was such a creature of habit that there was no way I could change my motivation. But I found out through trial and error that you actually can. And so doing that really helped me a lot. And I think that's the number one recommendation I would make to any person. And every now and then my watch beeps. You know, I have 2 times a day. It beeps in the afternoons, because that's usually when, you know, I get off track. And one of the beeps, I look and it says, "How's your Bodhisattva vow going?" You know. And then I just try to reset my motivation. You know, I try to reset my motivation in that moment. The other time I know to reset my motivation is when I get really angry. And then I'm like, okay, 12-step discipline says HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So I am going to stop right here until I figure out what I'm going to do next. And then try to make the next thing I do a right thing, not the right thing as if there is one, but a right thing. So thank you. And this will be the last. Thanks for coming to the mic, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a question at the bottom of this or not, but as you were talking, I was thinking of being a teenager in high school. I've got a couple teenagers at home, and and also college, and I would journal, and it seemed like I flipped through these personas, like, it depended on the book I was reading or the movie I just saw, or just whatever it was, I tried on persona after persona after persona. And I think in my mind, I was looking for the right one because I thought there was a right one, right? I was looking for who I am because somewhere in all of these, there's one that is me.
Right.
The whole idea of finding myself, right? And then what I found was that laying that all down and putting that down opened me up to people a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to approach people as some certain thing. I could be open to who they were in the moment a whole lot more.
Exactly.
And I had a big shift in that. And one of the personas I had when I was a kid came from my religious upbringing and my fairly strict religious upbringing that had very much an us and them.
Right.
And, us was defined very narrowly and them was huge.
Right.
And it wasn't until I learned to drop that that I could be open to anyone,
Right.
no matter their background or whatever. And it was a long gradual lesson, but
I really appreciate you sharing this because, again, this is something that is so real for all of us. I don't know, and I know people who teach school and they see it in the classroom and of course when we work in an office, you see it in the office. People are, we never grow up. I don't know if this is news to you or not, but anyway. But we all continuously do this, and the truest we are to ourselves is when we're sitting and meditating and just being, pure awareness, just being who we are, and however we can bring that more into everyday life, it's amazing. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It's like fantastic.
Thank you for your talk.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's great. Well, because of time, we'll have to stop here. But see, I was thinking to myself, by the way, Marcus, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, this is a really good place to end the Dharma talk on. Because it's like thematically, everybody who said something today they advanced the theme, and I just thank you for that, because you guys are great. Just keep coming here and just keep sitting, and I was talking to a couple people this week who love this room. They just love coming and sitting in here because they can feel the blessing and the goodness of this room. And what was somebody I was talking to right before the talk said, like this joined, this experience of being together in this room. It's wonderful. So thank you for that. Well, let's gather together the goodness that we've accomplished through our talk today, and dedicate it to all the beings who need to find their way. Make the aspiration that we can leave this room today and take a little of this with us when we go, and help people that we encounter this week. So we'll recite this in English only because I'm running a little late on time. We'll start with the words by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is. Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path. I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Be safe out there. It's a holiday weekend. Be safe. And if you can stay, please do. We're going to feed you. Probably not for another hour, but we'll feed you. So go get a coffee. We'll see you here in a little bit. Thank you to the sound department.